Welcome to the Coach Barnabas podcast. It's time to take a few minutes and leave behind the stuff that drains us and recharge our batteries with some encouragement and insight. Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Hi, thanks Nigel, my disembodied British voice of sophistication, does my little voiceover there. And welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. This is episode 3 of the Coach Barnabas podcast. And I'm Corey, and I'm just really thankful you've decided to join in. Hopefully you've listened to the first 2 and you've enjoyed it enough to join us for episode 3, or maybe this is your first one. There are 2 you can go back and listen to. But again, it's just a thrill to join you and to have you with me on this little adventure. And that's kind of what this episode is about. Um, Honestly, I mentioned in the first episode that this is something of a dream for me, something I didn't expect to ever come to pass. And I'm going to kind of lay that out. I woke up this morning not expecting to even do this today. But as was the case when I had my blog, sometimes I just started my day and a thought would just kind of run around in my head and I couldn't shake it loose. And so the blog became an outlet for me. And so I expect that this will be similar to where I may go to bed one night, figuring, oh, okay, we'll do it again sometime. I don't know when, don't know what we're going to talk about. And then you wake up the next morning and you can't shake the thought. You can't shake the anticipation to kind of share something with folks. So that's what happened today. I woke up and I just wanted to share with you this next episode. And I really want to lay out for you. I mentioned in the first one that the podcast ideas, the concept is something of a dream. So I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. And by that, I mean, I grew up in a small town about 40 miles north of San Francisco, Northern California. And there was one little local radio station that was way up on the dial. It had a weak signal. It pretty much got around town, and that was pretty much it. In a metropolitan area with stations in San Francisco, they were much further down the dial in the the area that had strong signals. And then we had our little radio station, and in that little radio station, there was a morning show, and the morning guy was a local legend. He was, if you were serious and you had a business and you were having a grand opening or some sort of big sale, this guy was outside broadcasting or just emceeing the event. He played the banjo, he sang, and during his shows, his radio shows Monday through Friday, if you had a birthday, somebody would call in and say, "Hey, it's so and so's birthday," and he would sing "Happy Birthday" on the radio. And if he did that, then it just made your day. And so my mom did that for me as I was growing up. She'd call every year on my birthday and make sure that it was timed, that he would sing it while I was sitting in the kitchen having breakfast. And the first time it happened, I mean, I about passed out. It was so awesome. And then it got to the point to where each year, I'd come into the kitchen and I'd eat my breakfast just waiting for that, to happen. So it became a bit of a tradition as I was growing up. And as fortune would have it, this guy, this radio guy, the local legend, was really good friends with a family that I was close to growing up. My best friend and his family knew this guy super well. And I remember as I was a little bit older, I was in elementary school still, but a little bit older, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. And he came over to the house on a Saturday, and we were over there playing, just goofing off. And he comes over, and I got to admit, I was kind of starstruck. I was like, oh my gosh, there he is. And he just talked to me, and he recognized my name from singing Happy Birthday and all that stuff. So he knew who I was, which, thrilled me. Are you kidding? And this guy's bigger than life. He was literally 6'7". So he was a big guy, but also bigger than life, just a huge personality, just loved people and had a great voice. And so I was kind of just, like I said, starstruck. And in striking up a conversation and relationship with him, I indicated I was fascinated with radio. I really was just curious how it all works. And so he invited me. He said, "I'll tell you what, if you have a day off from school or something, you're welcome to come down and join me and just hang out with me while I do the show." So of course, I'm on cloud 9. So the first opportunity I got, a day off from school, My mom drove me down in the morning. The show started at 6 a.m. And so I don't think it was 6 a.m. when she drove me there. Maybe it was more like 8. Um, and I just sat there with him for a couple hours and just watched him, pushing buttons and speaking into the microphone and playing records. Yes, records back then. And I was just, I mean, I was completely fascinated with the process and everything that went into it. And then as time went on, what happened is I got to the point to where I would, when I had a day off or a week off of school, I would get myself up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and ask my wife, getting up voluntarily in a good mood with a good attitude while it's still dark outside. That only happens if we're going on vacation. Any other time, I'm staying in bed as long as I possibly can. So the fact that I would do this on my own, my parents were still asleep, and I'd get up, get dressed, make myself some breakfast, which was generally a bowl of cereal. Who am I fooling? And I would walk to the radio station and I'd meet him there because the station was off the air overnight. It would shut down, I think midnight, 10 p.m. midnight, I think midnight though. And then it would start up with his show at 6 a.m. So I met him there. I got there a little before 5:30. He got there about 5:30 because he'd have to boot up the station and everything. Um, and so I got there, met him there, and watched him go through every step. And I sat with him through the entire show. And as time went on, it got to the point where he'd let me push buttons. He'd let me queue up records, and to the point where he'd give me a microphone. Maybe he'd ask me questions, and we'd kind of talk back and forth. I was speaking into a live microphone, and people could hear. It was just like it blew my mind. And so, fast forward now several years. I'm in junior high, going into high school, and I went back to the station. I talked to him and the general manager, who I'd become familiar with. And I said, "Look, I'm going into high school, looking into college. What kind of classes should I take to prepare myself for a career in radio?" And they kind of looked at each other, looked back at me, and said, "Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not a good career," which crushed me because I loved it and I wanted to do it. But what they weren't telling me, and I grew up to recognize it and realize, is that it's a nomadic life being a radio disc jockey, especially back in those days, and starting in a little station like the one we were in. For him, it was great. He got a great paycheck because he drew such ratings and was a local celebrity, and he supplemented his salary by doing things like grand openings and all this other stuff. But it was not a lucrative lifestyle for 95% of the people in that business. Now, there were some stars who made really good money and all that. You had your Dick Clarks and Wolfman Jacks and all these guys who, were celebrities, and they made their start in radio. Maybe they went into television, but those were few and far between. And they were working in big markets like Los Angeles and New York. I'm in a little town, right, of 20,000 people. So it would be a long road to climb. And so they discouraged me, and it shattered me. But I did end up doing some radio work at that station, among others, one other at least, notably. And I loved it. And I kind of just did it as a glorified hobby. I did get paid. And at one point in my life, that was my primary job, doing some production stuff, and I had my own radio show, and I did love it very much. But at the same time, it was not going to be a career for me. It was something I would do on the side if I was going to, as I got older and your needs kind of expand and your responsibilities expand, that kind of salary was not going to do it for me. And I recognize that. And so it was something that I eventually kind of gave up and haven't been doing in decades, to be honest. And over recent years, I've said it to my wife. I said, "Man, I miss it. I miss broadcasting. I miss radio. I did some voiceovers for television for a little bit, but I missed doing it." Um, and then somebody suggested, "Why don't you have a podcast?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but what do I have to say that people are going to tune in and listen?" Um, and as time went on, I mentioned in the first episode again that this was something of a dream for me. And what I'm doing is I'm blending two different elements into one. And that's what this podcast is. One is it goes back to my roots as a small child who loved broadcasting and speaking into a microphone and all that stuff, with part of my personality that is fueled by this particular thing, and that's being an encouragement, empowering people and firing them up. I'm not a motivational speaker, but uh, we all have that opportunity to be an encouragement to help people. And so for me, it's taking this medium of broadcasting and speaking to the microphone and looking into the camera, as it were, and trying to speak encouragement and life into an audience. For you, you may have another hobby, you may have another passion that's a little less public, but can have just as great, honestly, a greater impact on people. So for instance, maybe you like to bake, or my dad was a cop in San Francisco. Very um, stressful job, as you might imagine. San Francisco is a big city, lots of crime and awful things happening there. And it was in an era when police were, not particularly popular. Um, and so, but he loved it, but it was also a very stressful job. And on the weekends, or he'd come home at the end of a day, he'd go right into the garage where he had all kinds of woodworking equipment, and he would just spend hours in there. And that was kind of his outlet to kind of let go of the stress and create something, build something. And that was a release for him. But it got to the point where he's making all this stuff, and it's like, what are we going to do with this? And he just basically started gifting those things to people randomly, and it became a source of encouragement to them, where it made their day. They felt like they were thought of, and he made something specifically for this person. I thought you might need this, or I noticed you were, looking at our stuff when you were over at the house, and so I made one for you. I hope you like it. And that's something that became an important part of his need to not just to be a cop and protect people and to put the bad guys away. That was fulfilling in its own way, but he wanted to be able to do something positive in the lives of innocent people, let's just say, and people we knew, that he could serve them in some way, some tangible way, give them something that might make them happy or might help their lives a little bit. And so I bring that to you: is what is your hobby? What is your passion? What is something that if you got nothing in return monetarily, that you can do or give to people that would bless them, that would make their day, make them feel thought of, and just randomly, maybe it's like, you don't even know how much I needed this today. Ever have anybody say that to you? Has anybody done anything in your life where you said, "Man, you have no idea how much I needed that today"? I'd love to hear your comments. Put that, leave a comment, and let me know if that's ever happened to you, or if something you've done has enriched the lives of somebody else beyond your knowledge. You had no way of knowing that this was going to mean something to them. You're on social media perhaps, and you see it every day. I see it every day. Somebody is going through something, whether they themselves or somebody they know is having some sort of health issue and in the hospital, or having surgery of some kind. Um, Maybe they just lost a pet. We love animals, and we have pets. And just last year we had to put down our I mean, this cat was a legend in his own way. And we had to put him down, and we were heartbroken. And remained It's still tough. We just went through the holidays, and it was tough to look back at pictures and memories, and he's no longer here. So there are people who are hurting, and you see this every day. And it's easy to just to write back and say, "Hey, thinking of you, praying for you," and offer some sort of support that way. But maybe take it an extra step. If you like to bake, maybe baking them a cake or a pie, or making them some dinner if you like to cook. Or if you are a woodworker, maybe it's you make something that would make them happy. I don't know. I don't be limited by my imagination. You know what your gifts are. You know what your passions are. Is find a way to use that as a creative outlet, but also as a tool to encourage somebody and to lift them up and to make them feel special and thought of. That can be a very powerful thing. At the end of each episode of Coach Barnabas, you'll hear Nigel come on again here shortly. And the tagline at the very end of what he says is, "Make a difference today." And we all have this opportunity. Each day is a clean slate, and today's your opportunity to make a difference in somebody's life. Making a phone call, sending an email, doing something nice for somebody randomly, taking them to lunch or dinner, or bringing them lunch or dinner. Who knows? But there's something that we can do each and every day that can make the difference. And I tell you that if you just look for opportunities. What can I do today to make a difference in somebody's life? Believe me, it's going to open your eyes to a whole new world of possibility to do just that. And it will give you a sense of fulfillment, but even greater is the reward in knowing that you did something and it just lit them up, made them happy, or encouraged them, or put a smile on their face and they haven't smiled in days. Who knows? We've all been on the receiving end of that. And now, maybe we can be benefactors instead of beneficiaries. Okay. So that's my word of encouragement to you today. Thank you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you being here and being part of Coach Barnabas and becoming a Coach Barnabas, being an encouragement, helping people get from where they are to where they'd rather be. Okay, you can do that today. Make a difference. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, be encouraged and be an encouragement. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for joining the Coach Barnabas podcast. We'd greatly appreciate your support by liking and subscribing to the podcast and setting up notifications so we can let you know when new episodes are available. We'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment. Make a difference today.